Relationships and the brain. That's our topic today. And can you imagine that your brain actually can be impacted by your relationships? Imagine that. And I think it's for the positive or the negative. I have a world-class expert, Lee Gerdes, who is the founder and CEO of Cereset, which they deal with the brain, literally the physical brain and the balances of that. And we're going to talk about that today. Now, if you have not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. If you have a question, please send it to us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. We're going to talk about relationships in the brain, so stay tuned. Welcome back. We're going to talk about relationships in the brain. And Lee, thank you for being here, Mr. Lee Gerdes.
Thank you.
And I know we've done some other segments, and I appreciate what you do. First of all, thank you for your own personal journey and how you've used that to help people around the globe. And this is exciting to me because real people, real clients, real friends of mine, my family, we've all gone through Cereset. And it's been extremely helpful for all of us and extremely helpful for our clients. So tell us what Cereset is, what it does. Just give us a synopsis of that.
Cereset is a way for the brain to be reflected back to itself so it can effectively orchestrate itself or regulate itself.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like looking in the mirror and combing your hair.
Exactly like it. That's
okay.
what it is.
Okay.
And without the mirror, it might
look different. I see those guys at the gym at 4 a.m. because they didn't see the mirror.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
And so what Cereset does, though, is nothing that invades the brain. Mm. It's nothing that hurts the person.
It's not drugs, none of that.
It's got zero downside risk. Mm-hmm. You know, with 900 people through clinical trials, we've never had an adverse event. Mm-hmm. You know, and now with some really compromised people, I'm principal investigator for the Department of Defense on mild traumatic brain injury in the military at Fort Bragg and at Walter Reed Hospital. And we've through phase 126 people, and we've had no adverse events, of course, and through the other 900 people, we haven't either. And what that happens is when the brain gets to see itself, it actually can orchestrate itself. Mm. And when you think about it, when the brain's had too much work, you get tired.
Oh, yeah.
Because it wants to sleep.
Absolutely.
When the brain's had too much stress, you get stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Because the brain has had too much to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So when we allow it to see itself, it does what actually is the opposite of what you would think sometimes. You have a 8th grader with, they say ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder. Mm-hmm. Guess what? If you give that 8th grader you give them a stimulant, Adderall, Ritalin, right?
Yep.
That's a stimulant on time release, and it pushes up the brain activity artificially.
Right.
And then if you keep doing that, i.e. the person keeps using it, then at some point in time, then they can't sleep because the brain gets artificially pushed, and now it doesn't stop and it doesn't slow down enough to sleep well. And so then they have to have something to help them sleep.
Wow.
So we're at 30 or 40% now in every college or university. They use stimulant and sleep. In my day, they used to call that
drugs.
Bingo. That's exactly what they called it. And so what Cereset does is exactly the opposite. We relax the brain. We bring it down. And when we bring it down, it's like gears that can mesh together, and now they can function.
That's great.
And so when one's going at a different speed, when one's going at a different angle, those gears can't mesh well when you think about it as a mechanism.
Sure.
And so that's what the whole technology does, is to rely. And that's why, because you had it. But for me, when I have a tune-up session, that means a 10-minute nap at least.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I sleep through almost every time I do it, and I sleep really good, and I come out refreshed.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the negative impacts of having a brain that's not balanced?
A brain that's not balanced will lead us to make decisions that aren't wise.
And that can happen in your relationships too.
That always happens in relationships, because that's where the energy flows the most. It doesn't happen in calculating something.
Right.
As an engineer would.
Right.
But in a relationship,
where your wife or husband talks back to you or talks at you. Yes.
Here we go. Now, in a relationship, everything, they say that there's a honeymoon period, right? And then they say that after that honeymoon period, there are some rough edges, maybe. Well, if those rough edges get more than just a few, stressors keep going up and up and up. And if they keep going up, what do? We get into fight or flight. That means exactly what it is. The brain goes into a sympathetic dominance on the right side, and we're more apt to argue.
So when you talk about the imbalances, fight, flight, or freeze, you're actually talking about your brain does something different.
Totally.
So walk through that, because you use bigger words than like most people might use. Parasympathetic, and explain that. But so if I fight or I flight or I freeze, in brain language, give that to me.
The freeze response is when the brain numbs everything. It's when it says, this person is going to implode, and therefore we're going to settle him or her down. We're going to contract blood. We're going to slow the heart rate. We're going to slow the lung. We're going to slow the firing in the brain. We're going to slow all that in a parasympathetic dominance. And it will often lead to a depressive tendency. Right. In fight or flight.
So in freeze, a person might feel depressed. They might turn to food. They might not have the energy.
Well, their food doesn't digest well, too. Okay. It's not just that they go there, but it doesn't digest well.
So they gain more weight.
A lot more.
Yeah, okay.
Metabolism doesn't work.
Okay, so that's important. So if someone's experienced a lot of trauma, we'll talk about that in relationships. That could actually be why they can't lose weight.
Yeah, it's definitely one possibility.
Okay. Let's keep going. So now, give me the other sides of the brain.
The other side then is the gas. So if we have the brake on the left, we have the gas on the right, just like a car. And that's how we go through life: gas, brake, gas, brake, gas, brake. Sometimes we need to shut down and rest and digest, and sometimes we need to speed up and really go for it. And the brain needs to move where it needs to. It needs to move when it needs to move there. If it can't do that, then it's stuck. And it's gotten too much stress, and therefore maybe it's too much stress in fight or flight. And he says something or she says something, and there's a quick response. And the response is not at all equal to the issue. Right. The response is way different. And that tells us that the person, or both, one or both, are off. They're both, one or both are stuck.
They're overreacting. Yep. Okay. Now, I'm a psychologist, and so of course for me it's playful. I mean, imagine if I can take two bad brains and put them in the same marriage.
So let's take...
That could be a lot of fun, right?
It's interesting though, because when we see people often who are in abusive relationships, and we've seen hundreds, the abuser is generally in fight or flight. And that makes sense, doesn't it?
Quick responses, quick anger, emotional regulation, that kind of stuff.
And the abused is in freeze, numbed. What if those two come together to balance each other in the first place?
Oh, we have a lot of couples, Lee, who they come for intensives here, and they come as couples. And often they'll both do Cereset at the same time. And for me, as their counselor, that's like heaven. Okay, because oftentimes, we deal with addictions, sex addiction, intimacy, interaction, stuff like that. And he's the fight guy. He's the fast, the emotionally immature, doesn't think before he talks, and can be abusive. And she's this kind of demure, shut down. Depression's like 80% of my population. So you're talking about that. So you're talking about the brains of these two people. That's my couple all the time. I love when they both do Cereset because she's able to start finding her voice by about Wednesday. So all of a sudden, like she starts showing up, and he's able to kind of relax and not take what she's saying with so much reaction, So what you're doing with my couples is amazing because they're both getting to get more neuroplastic and move from where they are more towards the center and be able to be more there with the other person.
And I suppose they can come together then, or I suppose
they make a different decision, right?
They might decide not to.
Mm-hmm. Well, in our case, most of them stay together because that's what they're trying to do. But let me ask you this. Let's suppose someone has a relatively good family of origin, no car accidents, no attacks, nothing. Their brain's in pretty good shape. But they marry someone who is abusive. They marry someone who is immature, who is in that flight mode. Over the years, can that actually affect her brain?
Totally.
Can you tell me a little more about that?
If he's the type A and wants to make her decisions, she then loses the ability to make those decisions. Even though she wants to, her brain shuts it down because making those decisions will cause more trauma, more stress.
Yep, that makes sense.
And so she'll shut down more.
So it starts getting worse. They both start getting worse.
They're both getting worse.
Okay. This is the first time I'm saying this. So almost this neuropolarization.
It is, exactly.
Can actually cause marital dysfunction to get worse and also maybe even cause a divorce. But it's actually neuro dysfunction. And there's other stuff going on, but that's part of what's going on.
See the sadness there to me? Is that it's exactly what you said. It can cause a divorce, but then it's not solved.
Right. They just go find another person.
And they both walk away broken.
Right. So, for me, I love when my couples do Cereset with their marriage counseling. It helps me so much. It really, really does.
I bet.
Now, Lee, let me ask you this. So, if someone's watching this, they think, hey, maybe I have a brain imbalance. Maybe I'm the flight guy, or maybe I'm the gal who shuts down, or maybe I'm the guy who's the passive shutdown, and my wife is the rooster. Okay. Is there something I can do, even just to find out if I'm imbalanced? What can they do?
There's an introduction to Cereset that you do here and that Cereset offices do, where the brain is just looked at in two places. We look at it in the emotional center, and we look at it in the autonomic center. So we look at it how they're going to respond in terms of emotion.
Oh, that's really helpful.
Emotion, it either goes outwardly mostly or inwardly.
Yes.
And the autonomic system either goes the same. It either goes outward, in other words, it activates, or it depresses. It either goes down or it goes up.
Okay. So I've had people do that. They come in and they just do the one session. And what I like about it is they get their little sheet of paper and it has numbers on it. Okay. And it says, okay, emotionally, you're a 62 or you're a 21, and on this side, you're an 85. Okay. So you're out of balance. And so they can actually see it. It's not like woo-woo stuff. Okay. It's not a secret either.
No.
This is math. Okay. When that little sheet comes out, okay, here's your brain. Sorry, man. That's just the way it is. I didn't do it.
Don't kill a messenger.
Right. I'm just taking the photograph, okay? Okay. But, people who are in relationships, it can affect them, but some of that's from past trauma or just the way they're set up. But it really helps for, I think, people, when they come to Colorado Springs, they can actually just find out. And then they can say, okay, yeah, I think I really need to do this deal because I'm out of balance really significantly. Yeah. Or, wow, I've never had anyone really say, wow, my brain's so good, I don't have to do this. I can't wait to meet that person. But what are maybe some typical patterns that, if they're in a relationship that could be affecting them, that you might see, from your end?
Well, from my end, there's of course a difference between male and female in general.
Okay.
And but when there's relationship stress, and it might not even be in the relationship, it might be outside. Let's say one of the kids, the kids, or
job,
life. Yeah. I don't know if you know it yet, but life is really stressful sometimes.
They're trying to make it that way. It used to be so much easier, you know?
And so what we find is that when that stress happens, it always happens to both people.
That's fair. But they can deal with it differently. Like if a stress happens, if he's in flight, he's probably going to get, let's say, less mature. And if she's in freeze, she's going to go solitude and shut down, right? So it really depends on how they're set up, on how they're going to deal with that.
So he's in flight wanting somebody
to regulate him.
And she's in freeze wanting somebody to allow her space.
Yes. And
he's not wanting to allow space.
Right. So that can create a whole bunch of problems.
So you got that. You know, that's a perfect storm.
At some point, it'd be really cool to write a book on the neuropolarization in marriage. I just love that. You know, I think that that's really a real thing.
It is real thing.
And I think it's a real thing that's almost curable. Like, okay, let's spend a week in Colorado. Let's get our brains going. That'll bring us both down to calm. So whatever our problems are, A, we can see what they are, and B, we can start addressing them, as opposed to being in this kind of neuropolarization war that we don't have a language for and we don't have a way out, right? Because they don't teach us in high school.
But right? One thing we do have is we have a certain amount of disciplined trust in an intimate relationship. And that disciplined trust, if we use it and can be guided with it, could use us and help us to see that that very same thing happens with us in a workplace and a boss. It happens, right? It happens all over. It happens with us and the clerk at the store. It happens. And then we'll start to see the world differently.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
And then when we do that, that's called wisdom.
Yes, well, I agree. Well, thank you, Lee Gerdes, and thank you for what you're doing around the world and country, helping people get their brains back, you know? And that sounds like a great t-shirt. I got my brain back at Cereset, right? And so follow me. But this is serious, and I really do. I appreciate you for watching today. And share this with people. I think this is something that can help a lot of people, and really encourage you. If you are anywhere near Colorado Springs, or if you want to do Cereset somewhere else, let us know. Maybe get your first thing done and find out, because this does really help. I mean, I have had so many couples helped by this. That's why we're giving this to you and presenting this to you, because it's something that I think the world needs to know more about me, honestly. Yes. I think you're one of those secrets that, you know, needs more exposure, because this works and it really helps, and it's not painful, and you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to cry about it. You just sit in a chair and let your brain begin to heal itself. So until next time, please take a next step to take care of you.